Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir, has never been one to shy away from discussing politics. Now, whether or not you think this is a good idea for a leader of a publicly traded company, I'll leave that to you. But for me personally, Palantir is inherently a political company, as a majority of their money made from their services come from the government sector. So I honestly don't mind Alex Karp discussing politics. And whether or not you agree with him, I actually think he has some really interesting things to say. Anyway though, let's get into this video. So sit back, relax, and enjoy.
In America, leaders, especially people who are leading interesting businesses, have a unique role in shaping the way in which people think and what they do. And this is an issue where to speak up is going to require absorbing inbound. And that's how you know you're doing something important. Obviously, lots of things we're trying to accomplish, but in my humble opinion, the rise of anti-Semitism, which is often linked with being virulently anti-Israel and, quite frankly, being virulently anti-West, arises because we do not have public unity around values that most of us support. And I think the most poignant, obvious example is we have 8 Americans being abused, probably including sexually abused, in a dungeon. And we have to, I think most Americans want to know that America will act quickly when Americans are kidnapped, abused, murdered. And I think one of the reasons why you see people excusing this, celebrating this, often masked and terrorizing people, including people talking about the events on October 7th, is because they're dancing on a party of our disunity, when in fact most Americans believe that what happened on October 7th, and especially what happened to Americans, should trigger an automatic response that is punishing for people that dare to touch Americans, imprison, torture, and rape American citizens. And getting a bipartisan group of politicians, senators, which in today's landscape is unusual, getting business leaders to speak up was basically historic. And so I'm proud to be part of this. And obviously, you know, I don't have the same role as somebody whose son is in a dungeon now, but I'm doing my best. We're doing our best to show that there's a lot of unity, especially among the corporate elite. Corporate America assumed we could outsource moral discussions and leadership unless it was an easy question. Obviously, it's an easy question, and you can have a platitude where people clap and you can go back to business. People obviously love that. It's a free ride. But on issues where leadership does mean you're going to have difficult, hard conversations with people, and you may lose a couple friends, and you're going to get disinvited from the family wedding. But you know, in America, leaders, especially people who are leading interesting businesses, have a unique role in shaping the way in which people think and what they do. And this is an issue where to speak up is going to require absorbing inbound. And that's how you know you're doing something important.
Alex, what do you want to see the U.S. government do?
Well, luckily for the world, no one's putting me in charge of the U.S. government. But were I in charge, I would have a policy that any American that is in any way abused, especially including murder, assault, and kidnapping, you would know that you and the people involved would pay a high price, and I would begin to persecute that across the globe, and I would use this as an example, and I would make it clear to adversaries. You can scream, you can abuse the United Nations, you can undermine the rule of law, which would also push back on. These rulings in the ICC are completely ridiculous. But if you touch our citizens, including citizens I don't like, don't agree with, do not support me or Palantir, we will exact a price from you and we will free them.
We've seen so many companies rally around social issues in the past few years. What about this one?
Look, I don't know how many companies are going to publicly rally around the issue of fighting against anti-Jewish bias. But I am committed to speaking publicly to cajole people into doing it. I would say that Jews are a 0.2% of the world population and a much larger percentage of people doing interesting things. And so there's a lot of vulnerability. People, what I'd say Jewish Americans and Israel stands for as different, but it's, are you allowed to be exceptional? Are you going to be punished for being exceptional? Is our society going to allow institutions to be exceptional and the people in those institutions to grow based on their talents and their integrity? And I see it as being very important to get corporate leaders to speak out about the general issue, because anti-Semitism is a negation of, do we believe that there will be accomplishment? Is accomplishment going to be fair? If somebody is disproportionately accomplished, do they become persecuted? And we need to get everybody who's doing things that are important, not just corporate America, building, arts, people involved in all sectors of life who are pro-accomplishment, to speak out against this regressive movement. And I'm a little more optimistic than I was in the past, because I can tell you, in private, nearly everyone doing anything is aghast at anti-Semitism and it wants nothing to do with anti-Semites. The key issue is, can you get people to go in public? And that's what we're working on.
You have told me in interviews that this is a fight for our values, for the fight for the West. And Prime Minister Netanyahu said it in an interview with me a few weeks ago, our fight is your fight. Why do you think that message isn't resonating? If
you look at Israel and Ukraine, Israel is very popular with the majority of people, and it's more complicated for the elite. And with the Ukraine war, it's the opposite. So I actually think the average person in this country is much more likely to support Israel than to support Hamas. And then you have a politically fractured country where, unfortunately, there's a left-right divide, and many people on the left see Prime Minister Netanyahu as an embodiment of a right-wing figure. So there's a lot of projection, but my interactions in this country and abroad, by the way, in Europe, are kind of, it's a little bit, the person on the street and the person in academia or an elite institution have very, very different views on Israel. So I slightly would dispute that. Look, war is bloody and disgusting and horrific, and there are innocent Palestinians who died, and that's a tragedy, and that's very, very hard to look at. And I don't, by the way, think defending Israel or fighting to bring home hostages, and again, in my case, especially the American hostages, but all hostages, means that you're defending every policy of a country, just like my pride in America doesn't mean I'm defending every policy in America, and there are many policies I disagree with. So there's a lot of issues there, but I would say most of America is horrified by what happened on October 7th. Almost everyone in America is horrified by the dramatic rise of anti-Semitism, which does not receive the reaction it deserves. And most Americans would like to see leadership on the Middle East, on bringing hostages home, especially American hostages, and clear statements about discrimination, even discrimination against Jews. I feel, though, I think part of the reason why leaders need to stand up is this is a very, very, very small minority of America. They succeed in having an outsized impact simply because the rest of America thinks they're so idiotic that this can't actually be dangerous or true. But it is dangerous, and they do believe these things. And if we do not speak up, they will continue to tell themselves this, and there will be a sense on their side that it's okay to push the boundaries and push the boundaries and push the boundaries. And so, as heinous as what these people are saying is, it exists in part because there are not enough people saying this is really dumb, this is hatred, and it will not be tolerated. Again, not eviscerating the First Amendment, but just using the First Amendment to say, hey, this is either stupid or hateful. It's very hard to know whether you're an idiot or you're a demigod or you're just purely a hateful person. But we disagree.
Even internally in companies, you know, there's talk of discrimination and bias, and I do wonder if DEI needs to evolve. Alex?
I think you will find the institutions that win hire the best and the brightest people, and not all those people are going to be from any one population, but these institutions are highly intolerant of discrimination, and I would dare say particularly intolerant of anti-Semitism. So you have to disambiguate institutions that are going to do well and institutions that are going to fail. The institutions that are going to fail tend to like discrimination, malaise, political intrigue, and bigotry. The institutions that do well reject those things, and you're going to see that in America and all over the world. And that's good for everyone, and it's good for the fight against anti-Semitism.